While serving a 9-year prison sentence, walking across the prison yard, Otis, a U.S. military veteran, had an epiphany. Get in the boat, you are drowning. After years of feeling lost and isolated, he felt it was time for him to disconnect his bond with opioids and reconnect his bond with family, friends, and the community. Opioid addiction is a crisis in America. The struggle with addiction can be isolating, demoralizing, miserable, shameful, and lonely. Getting on the road to recovery is tough for everyone, but it's especially tough for veterans. And why is that? Veterans have been broken down. For veterans who survived the war, many of them feel the government has not given them the tools to survive the peace. For some, pain medications called opioids are prescribed to heal the wounds of war. For some, opioids cover up the feeling of brokenness. Veterans are more likely than the general population to experience trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder, and chronic pain. All factors found to be associated with increased opioid prescriptions and misuse. And this is why recovery is so hard. I'm Kajwa Lor, an educator, community-engaged researcher, and clinical pharmacist from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm part of the Milwaukee Prevention of Opioid Misuse through Peer Training Team, otherwise known in the community as Milwaukee PROMPT. I felt a connection with the veteran community as I was born and raised in an immigrant refugee Hmong family in Wisconsin. The photo shown here is called a pandao. It's a hand-sewn story cloth that is passed down from generations. Each stitch depicts the history of my roots. The Hmong are an ethnic Asian minority group, originally a mountain people in the highlands of China and Southeast Asia. The Hmong withstood centuries of persecution. They have no land and no country to call home. My grandfathers were secret soldiers in the Vietnam War, recruited by the U.S. CIA agents as a clandestine operation to interrupt the supply of the Viet Cong from the north to the south of Vietnam and to save the lives of United States pilots. It is estimated that with one U.S. pilot saved, 4 to 5 Hmong secret soldiers died. One of these U.S. soldiers saved from the Vietnam War was Bob Curry, founder of Dry Hooch, our community partner. When the U.S. troops withdrew from Vietnam, hundreds of thousands of Hmong were left behind. My family was resettled in Wisconsin. The trauma of war, losing loved ones, post-traumatic stress disorder, and the feeling of not belonging are known to me with my experiences growing up in an immigrant refugee family. Although I've worked as a clinical pharmacist with providers managing patients on high doses of chronic pain medications, my perception of addiction and treatment for addiction transformed after hearing Otis's story about the bond. Otis has a tell-you-like-it-is attitude, and he's always willing to speak his mind. He explained how it is completely natural for humans to want to have human relationships and connections. Instead of having a bond with your own emotions, family, and friends, and dealing with the issues in life, the addict goes to the bond with opioids. The bond created with opioids supersedes the bond with emotions, family, friends, issues, and other responsibilities. And the reality of addiction doesn't hit for some until hitting rock bottom. Otis used heroin for over 30 years, and he began using heroin soon after his military discharge in 1976. He was frequently in and out of recovery centers, VA treatment programs, and private rehabilitation facilities. Otis described the need to face the trauma he experienced before military service, during military service, and the trauma self-inflicted after military service during his active addiction. Reconnecting with human relationships, emotions, and facing the stuff was part of the process for recovery. The road to recovery is a series of cycles of addiction within a journey of sobriety in life. The journey is a spiral. Sometimes it takes 2 steps back to move 1 step forward. Otis went to Dry Hooch for a job. At the time, he was homeless and desperate to get his life on track. And what initially began as a place to get a job turned into a place where he found a life purpose. Dry Hooch is a nonprofit organization that helps connect veterans to housing, employment, and food. Dry is key because alcohol and drug addiction plague so many returning vets. Hooch, in military jargon, is a hut or a safe place to sleep during combat. As such, the concept behind Dry Hooch was a desire to establish a place dedicated to helping veterans who survived the war survive the peace. It's not only a coffee shop, but a place where transition takes place, not only from the transition from war to civilian life, but also meeting veterans at any transition in their life, including addiction to recovery. This is the Dry Hooch approach. The veteran experience in war and addiction are only known by those that have walked in it. Peer-to-peer mentorship is a human connection to rebuild a veteran's life. With peer mentorship, Otis was able to connect to his peer mentor's experience and no longer felt he was alone on his journey to recovery and surviving the peace. Otis attributes his recovery journey to the most profound truism of his life, which was hope. Dry Hooch instilled this hope, and with his work as a peer mentor at Dry Hooch, he has learned about the importance of empathy and patience. As a peer mentor, Otis was able to take a step deeper into his own recovery. He now shares his lived experiences and spreads this message of hope to other veteran peer mentors. He also has assembled a team of peer mentors to help other veterans with addiction. As a family member or a friend of a person in recovery from addiction, empowering is important. It requires a bit of tough love to be able to set boundaries and give the addict what they need instead of what they want or enabling. Veteran peer mentoring is what Dry Hooch believes to be the foremost factor during a veteran's recovery from opioid addiction. The peer mentoring approach includes sharing a lived experience to relate and understand where their peer is at by validating their perspective, displaying active listening skills, being vulnerable about their own experiences, and cultivating trust. This unique relationship through shared experiences moves veterans towards recovery. Veterans are trained to have the back of another brother or sister in combat. The peer mentor model supports veterans to get clean, face life, connect with clinicians, and prioritize wellness and self-care in the recovery process. 4 of Robert Wood Johnson clinical scholars are working with local veterans and are committed providers with diverse expertise and experience related to opioid misuse. Together, the clinical scholars, Otis, along with others on the Milwaukee PROMPT team, created a training program to assist veterans at Dry Hooch to mentor their peers struggling with opioid addiction. We used a community-engaged approach while creating this training. It required academic members to become part of the community and community members to become part of the research team, creating a unique working and learning environment. As a result, we created 6 modules for veterans. While working on this project, we learned many things about veterans and addiction and wanted to share them with you. First, self-care is the key to recovery. The veteran peer mentors trained during this project are in recovery themselves, so we emphasize the importance of taking care of yourself while doing the work. Second, the power of influence. Veterans in recovery that surround themselves with a strong circle of influence to create a positive behavior change remain in recovery. Third, meet them where they are. Everyone has their own story. For some addicts, the road to recovery is about facing the trauma of what happened before, during, or after military life. The peer mentor supports veterans to get the help they need and connect with clinicians. And fourth, include the community. We learn to walk alongside veterans and include the veteran voice to make a greater impact. As a clinical pharmacist and a Hmong immigrant refugee, I've learned that trust is earned by taking off the white coat, practicing humility, and walking alongside veterans. I leave you with a message that peer mentorship works. Support peer mentoring in your community. Peer mentors build hope and are essential for veterans in their road to recovery from addiction. As the Dry Hooch saying goes, Let's help veterans who survived the war survive the peace.